Hello everyone, and welcome to Soft Stories. I'm Stratton, and today we are going to be continuing our reading of the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. I'm quite eager to find out what happens next in our continuing and developing understanding of Stoic philosophy, and so I think we should jump right in with Book 4 of the Meditations. Let's go. Wherever it is in agreement with nature, the ruling power within us takes a flexible approach to circumstances, always adapting itself easily to both practicality and the given event. It has no favoured material for its work, but sets out on its objects in a conditional way, turning any obstacle into material for its own use. It is like a fire, mastering whatever falls into it. A small flame would be extinguished, but a bright fire rapidly claims as its own all that is heaped on it, devours it all, and leaps up yet higher in consequence. No action should be undertaken without aim, or other than in conformity with the principle affirming the art of life. Men seek retreats for themselves, in the country, by the sea, in the hills, and you yourself are particularly prone to this yearning. But all this is quite unphilosophic when it is open to you at any time you want to retreat into yourself. No retreat offers someone more quiet and relaxation than that into his own mind, especially if he can dip into thoughts there which put him at immediate and complete ease. And by ease I simply mean a well-ordered life. So constantly give yourself this retreat and renew yourself. The doctrines you will visit there should be few and fundamental, sufficient at one meeting to wash away all your pain and send you back free of resentment at what you must rejoin. And what is it you will resent? Human wickedness? Recall the conclusion that rational creatures are born for each other's sake, that tolerance is a part of justice, that wrongdoing is not deliberate. Consider the number of people who spent their lives in enmity, suspicion, hatred, outright war, and were then laid out for burial or reduced to ashes. Stop, then. Or will you fret at your allocation from the whole? Revisit the alternatives, providence or atoms, and the many indications that the universe is a kind of community. But will matters of the flesh still have their hold on you? Consider that the mind, once it has abstracted itself and come to know its own defining power, has no contact with the movement of the bodily spirit, be that smooth or troubled. And finally remember all that you have heard and agreed about pain and pleasure. Well then, will a little fame distract you? Look at the speed of universal oblivion, the gulf of immeasurable time both before and after, the vacuity of applause, the indiscriminate fickleness of your apparent supporters, the tiny room in which all this is confined. The whole earth is a mere point in space. What a minute cranny within this is your own habitation, and how many, and what sort, will sing your praises here? Finally, then, remember this retreat into your own little territory within yourself. Above all, no agonies, no tensions. Be your own master, and look at things as a man, as a human being, as a citizen, as a moral and mortal creature. And here are two of the most immediately useful thoughts you will dip into. First, that things cannot touch the mind. They are external and inert. Anxieties can only come from your internal judgment. Second, that all these things you see will change almost as you look at them, and then will be no more. Constantly bring to mind all that you yourself have already seen changed. The universe is change. Life is judgment. If mind is common to us all, then we have reason also in common, that which makes us rational beings. If so, then common too is the reason which dictates what we should or should not do. If so, then law is too common to us all. If so, then we are citizens. If so, we share in a constitution. If so, the universe is a kind of community. In what else could one say that the whole human race shares a common constitution? From there, then, this common city, we take our mind, our reason, our law. From where else? Just as the earthy part of me has been derived from some earth, the watery from the next element, the air of my breath from some other source, the hot and fiery from its own origin, for nothing comes from nothing, nor returns to nothing. So, the mind also has its source. Death, just like birth, is a mystery of nature. First a combination, then a dissolution of the same elements. Certainly no cause for shame, because nothing out of the order for an intelligent being, or contrary to the principle of his constitution. With such people, such an outcome is both natural and inevitable. If you wish it otherwise, you are hoping that figs will no longer produce their rennet. In any case, remember that in a very brief time both you and he will be dead, and shortly after not even your names will be left. Remove the judgment, and you have removed the thought, I am hurt. Remove the thought, I am hurt, and the hurt itself is removed. What does not make a human being worse in himself cannot make his life worse either. It cannot harm him from outside or inside. The nature of the beneficial was bound to act thus. All's right that happens in the world. Examine this saying carefully, and you will find it true. I do not mean right, simply in the context of cause and effect, but in the sense of just, as if some adjudicator were assigning dues. So keep on observing this, as you have started, and in all that you do, combine doing it with being a good man, in the specific conception of good man. Preserve this in every sphere of action. When someone does you wrong, do not judge things as he interprets them, or would like you to interpret them. Just see them as they are, in plain truth. Always have these two principles in readiness. First, to do only what the reason inherent in kingly and judicial power prescribes for the benefit of mankind. Second, to change your ground, if, in fact, there is someone to correct and guide you away from some notion. But this transference must always spring from a conviction of justice, or the common good, and your preferred course must be likewise, not simply for apparent pleasure or popularity. Do you possess reason? I do. Why not use it, then? With reason doing its job, what else do you want? You have subsisted as a part of the whole. You will vanish into that which gave you birth, or rather you will be changed, taken up into the generative principle of the universe. Many grains of incense on the same altar. One falls to ash first, the other later. No difference. Within 10 days, you will be regarded as a god by those very people who see you now as a beast or baboon. If you return to your principles and the worship of reason. No, you do not have thousands of years to live. Urgency is on you. While you live, while you can, become good. What ease of mind you gain from not looking at what your neighbour has said or done or thought, but only at your own actions, to make them just, reverential, imbued with good. So do not glance at the black characters either side, but run right on to the line. Straight, not scraggly. One who is all in a flutter over his subsequent fame fails to imagine that all those who remember him will very soon be dead, and he too. Then the same will be true of all successors, until the whole memory of him will be extinguished in a sequence of lamps lit and snuffed out. But suppose immortality in those who will remember you, and everlasting memory. Even so, what is that to you? And I do not simply mean that this is nothing to the dead, but to the living also. What is the point of praise, other than for some practical aspect of management? As it is, you are losing the opportunity of that gift of nature which does not depend on another's word. So, everything in any way beautiful has its beauty of itself, inherent and self-sufficient. Praise is no part of it. At any rate, praise does not make anything better or worse. This applies even to the popular conception of beauty, as in material things or works or art. So does the truly beautiful need anything beyond itself? No more than law, no more than truth, no more than kindness or integrity. Which of these things derives its beauty from praise, or withers under criticism? Does an emerald lose its quality if it is not praised? And what of gold, ivory, purple, a lyre, a dagger, a flower, a bush? You may ask how, if souls live on, The air can accommodate them all from the beginning of time. Well, how does the earth accommodate all those bodies buried in it over the same eternity? Just as here on earth, once bodies have kept their residence for whatever time, their change and decomposition makes room for other bodies. So it is with souls migrated to the air. They continue for a time, then change, dissolve, and take fire as they are assumed into the generative principle of the whole. In this way they make room for successive residents. Such would be one's answer on the assumption that souls do live on. We should consider, though, not only the multitude of bodies thus buried, but also the number of animals eaten every day by us and other creatures. A huge quantity consumed and, in a sense, buried in the bodies of those who feed on them. And yet there is room for them, because they were reduced to blood and changed into the elements of air and fire. How to investigate the truth of this? By distinguishing the material and the causal. No wandering. In every impulse, give what is right. In every thought, stick to what is certain. Universe, your harmony is my harmony. Nothing in your good time is too early or too late for me. Nature, all that your seasons bring is fruit to me. All comes from you, exists in you, returns to you. The poet says, "Dear city of Cecrops." Will you not say, "Dear city of Zeus"? If you want to be happy, says Democritus, do little. May it not be better to do what is necessary, what the reason of a naturally social being demands, and the way reason demands it done? This brings the happiness both of right action and of little action. Most of what we say and do is unnecessary. Remove the superfluity, and you will have more time and less bother. So in every case one should prompt oneself, is this, or is it not, something necessary? And the removal of the unnecessary should apply not only to actions, but to thoughts also. Then no redundant actions either will follow. Try out, too, how the life of the good man goes for you. The man content with his dispensation from the whole, and satisfied in his own just action and kind disposition. You have seen that. Now, look at this. Do not trouble yourself. Keep yourself simple. Someone does wrong? He does wrong to himself. Has something happened to you? Fine. All that happens has been fated by the whole from the beginning and spun for your own destiny. In sum, life is short. Make your gain from the present moment with the right reason and justice. Keep sober and relaxed. Either in an ordered universe or in a stew of mixed ingredients, yet still coherent order. Otherwise, how could a sort of private order subsist within you if there is disorder in the whole? Especially given that all things, distinct as they are, nevertheless permeate and respond to each other. A black character, an effeminate, unbending character, the character of a brute or dumb animal, infantile, stupid, fraudulent, coarse, mercenary, despotic. If one who does not recognize the contents of the universe as a stranger in it, no less a stranger is the one who fails to recognize what happens in it. He is a fugitive if he runs away from the social principle, blind if he shuts the eye of the mind, a beggar if he depends on others and does not possess within him all he needs for life, a tumor on the universe if he stands aside and separates himself from the principle of our common nature in disaffection with his lot. For it is nature which brings this about, just as it brought you about too. A social splinter, if he splits his own soul away from the soul of all rational beings, which is a unity. One philosopher has no shirt. One has no book. Here is another half-naked. I have no bread, he says, but I'm faithful to reason. But I, for my part, have all the food of learning, and yet I am not faithful. Love the art which you have learned, and take comfort in it. Go through the remainder of your life in sincere commitment of all your being to the gods, and never making yourself tyrant or slave to any man. Consider, for example, the time of Vespasian. You will see everything the same. People marrying, having children, falling ill, dying, fighting, feasting, trading, farming, flattering, pushing, suspecting, plotting, praying for the death of others, grumbling at their lot, falling in love, storing up wealth, longing for consulships and kingships. And now that life of theirs is gone, vanished. Pass on again to the time of Trajan. Again, everything the same. That life, too, is dead. Similarly, look at the histories of other eras and indeed whole nations, and see how many lives of striving met with a quick fall and resolution into the elements. Above all, review in your mind those you have seen yourself in empty struggles, refusing to act in accord with their own natural constitution, to hold tight to it and find it sufficient. And in this context, you must remember that there is proportionate value in our attention to each other. So you will not lose heart if you devote no more time than they warrant to matters of less importance. Words in common use long ago are obsolete now. So too the names of those once famed are, in a sense, obsolete. Camillus, Caeso, Valessus, Dentatus, a little later Scipio and Cato, then Augustus too, then Hadrian and Antoninus. All things fade, and quickly turn to myth. Quickly too utter oblivion drowns them, and I am talking of those who shone with some wonderful brilliance. The rest, once they have breathed their last, are immediately beyond sight, beyond knowledge. But what, in any case, is everlasting memory? Utter emptiness. So where should a man direct his endeavour? Here only. A right mind, action for the common good, speech incapable of lies, a disposition to welcome all that happens as necessary, intelligible, flowing from an equally intelligible spring of origin. Gladly surrender yourself to Clotho. Let her spin your thread into whatever web she wills. All is ephemeral, both memory and the object of memory. Constantly observe all that comes about through change, and habituate yourself to the thought that the nature of the whole loves nothing so much as to change one form of existence into another, similar but new. All that exists is, in a sense, the seed of its successor. But your concept of seed is simply what is put into the earth or the womb. That is very unphilosophic thinking. Your death will soon be upon you, and you are not yet clear-minded or untroubled, or free from the fear of external harm, or kindly to all people, or convinced that the justice of action is the only wisdom. Look into their directing minds, observe what even the wise will avoid or pursue. Harm to you cannot subsist in another's directing mind, nor, indeed, in any turn or change of circumstance. Where, then? In that part of you which judges harm. So no such judgment, and all is well. Even if what is closest to it, your own body, is subjected to knife or cautery, or left to suppurate or mortify, even so that faculty in you which judges these things should stay untroubled. That is, it should assess nothing either bad or good, which can happen equally to the bad man or the good. Because what can happen to a man, irrespective of his life's conformity to nature, is not, of itself, either in accordance with nature or contrary to it. Always think of the universe as one living creature, comprising one substance and one soul, how all is absorbed into this one consciousness, how a single impulse governs all its actions, how all things collaborate in all that happens, the very web and mesh of it all. You are a soul carrying a corpse, as Epictetus used to say. Change. Nothing inherently bad in the process, nothing inherently good in the result. There is a river of creation, and time is a violent stream. As soon as one thing comes into sight, it is swept past, and another is carried down. It too will be taken on its way. All that happens is as habitual and familiar as roses in spring and fruit in the summer. True, too, of disease, death, defamation and conspiracy, all that delights or gives pain to fools. What comes after is always in affinity to what went before, not some simple enumeration of disparate things and a merely necessary sequence, but a rational connection. And just as existing things are harmoniously interconnected, so the process of becoming exhibit no mere succession, but a wonderfully inherent affinity. Always remember Heraclitus. The death of earth is the birth of water. The death of water is the birth of air. The death of air is fire, and back again. Remember, too, his image of the man who forgets his way home, his saying that men are at odds with their most constant companion, the reason which governs all things. that their everyday experience takes them by surprise, that we must not act or speak as if asleep, and sleep brings the illusion of speech and action, and that we should not be like children with their parents, simply accepting what we are told. Just as if a god told you that you would die tomorrow, or at least the day after tomorrow, you would attach no importance to the difference of one day, unless you are a complete coward, such is the tiny gap of time. So you should think there no great difference between life to the umpteenth year and life to tomorrow. Think constantly how many doctors have died after knitting their brows over their own patients, how many astrologers after predicting the deaths of others, as if death were something important, how many philosophers after endless deliberation on death or immortality, how many heroes after the many others they killed, how many tyrants after using their power over men's lives with monstrous insolence, as if they themselves were immortal. Think, too, how many whole cities have died. Helice, Pompeii, Herculaneum, innumerable others. Go over now all those you have known yourself, one after the other. One man follows a friend's funeral and is then laid out himself. Then another follows him, and all in a brief space of time. The conclusion of this: you should always look on human life as short and cheap. Yesterday, sperm. Tomorrow, a mummy, or ashes. So one should pass through this tiny fragment of time in tune with nature, and leave it gladly, as an olive might fall when ripe, blessing the earth which bore it, and grateful to the tree which gave it growth. Be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm, and round it the seething waters are laid to rest. It's my bad luck that this has happened to me. No. You should rather say, it's my good luck that, although this has happened to me, I can bear it, without pain, neither crushed by the present, nor fearful of the future. Because such a thing could have happened to any man, but not every man could have borne it without pain. So why see more misfortune in the event than good fortune in your ability to bear it? Or in general, would you call anything a misfortune for a man which is not a deviation from man's nature? Or anything a deviation from man's nature which is not contrary to the purpose of his nature? Well then, you have learned what that purpose is. Can there be anything, then, in this happening which prevents you being just, high-minded, self-controlled, intelligent, judicious, truthful, honourable, and free, or any other of those attributes whose combination is the fulfilment of man's proper nature? So, in all future events which might induce sadness, remember to call on this principle. This is no misfortune, but to bear it, true to yourself, is good fortune. An unphilosophic, but nonetheless effective help to putting death in its place is to run over the list of those who have clung long to life. What did they gain over the untimely dead? At any rate, they are all in their graves by now. Cadicianus, Fabius, Julianus, Lepidus, and all others like them who took part in many funerals and then their own. In truth, the distance we have to travel is small, and we drag it out with such labour, in such poor company, in such a feeble body. No great thing, then. Look behind you at the huge gulf of time, and another infinity ahead. In this perspective, what is the difference between an infant of 3 days and a Nestor of 3 generations? Always run on the short road, and nature's road is short. Go then for the healthiest in all you say and do. Such a purpose releases a man from the labours of service, from all need to manage or impress. And that is the end of Book 4. Slightly more depressing than some of the others that we have seen, or at least depressing from our point of view, where we in our culture see death as this terrible end to be avoided or put off as long as possible. It seems clear from this reading that Marcus Aurelius did not see things that way. He understood that all of us die. Everything passes from life to death in what can be considered, in the great scheme of things, a moment, a mote of time, equivalent to a grain of sand at the bottom of the ocean, part of the whole, but not encompassing more than its want. And so then his advice is less to simply accept death and do nothing, but to make use of that time while you have it, and to not mourn the fact that you don't have more. For that, he believes, is a misuse of the time that you have. The more time you consider the past, the future, and your own place within the grand scheme of things, the less good work you're able to do. And that, I think, is quite powerful. Many people have issues with dealing with their own importance in life, as I have myself. Who am I? What does it mean to be a human being? Why do I matter? Why am I here? But at the end of the day, those questions, those thoughts, were not adding to my happiness, were not adding to my contributions to a greater society. And so I realized that for me, they were not the right questions. What can I do? How can I help? How can I be a better person? Those were the questions that moved me forward in my life and brought me to the person and the place where I am today. I hope you have enjoyed this continuation of the meditations of Marcus Aurelius, despite its occasionally heavy subject matter. I look forward to next time, where we have to see what Marcus has in store for us. And it's important to remember that this book was never intended for public consumption. It was his own thoughts and reflections on life. I think it's important that we use it then that way, for we are all quite harsh on ourselves, and I think Marcus is being quite harsh on himself as well. He is not admonishing us, he is providing instruction to his own betterment and his own future. What we take away from that is up to us. Let's see what there is to take away from it next time on Soft Stories. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next we meet, I wish you all the best, and goodbye.